Symphonia is a gorgeous indie game in which we have the job to get the top musicians from the Symphonia Orchestra back together to repair the realm and bring music back to life. To do just that, we have to navigate 3 sections of the orchestra with our trusty violinist Embody, dodging all sorts of traps and making tight precision jumps. Oh, and on top of that, well, you know me. Let's do it at double the speed. Let's do Symphonia, but faster. After our apparition in the new Founders Amphitheater, I quickly realized just how fast Embody, our main character, moved around the map. Did I commit a mistake once again and had put me in a miserable purgatory of lightning speed platforming? Well, there was only one way to find out. I breezed through the tutorial area learning the basic mechanics of Symphonia. Just the usual, jumps, wall jumps, wait, you can play the violin here? Oh, and I can use the bow to do an unusual big leap? Oh, wait a minute, and it gains inertia if you chain it? Oh boy, this is going to be so much fun! I cleared some rooms and even went to some optional challenges with tougher platforms, as I felt cocky with my new set of abilities, and although I died a couple times, nothing could stop me as I moved as fast as I could between the saw machines and the spikes. After a couple rooms in which I just jumped around flying like a jet, I arrived at the heart of the orchestra in Symphonia and saw how the place was in disarray. So it was time to find the other musicians and bring them back to play together one last time. I first paid a visit to the woodwind glass house, learning its new moving platforms and the lyres that would fall after a couple seconds standing on them. There were also pendulum platforms that swung across the rooms and wind currents that could make me fly for a while. Nothing crazy to begin with, although the aggregated speed made dodging the spikes quite harder. Not much later though, glass platforms were introduced, and using the inertia from the air currents I was able to keep moving forward, confident that this would be an easy challenge. Then I encountered the famous flute player I was looking for, but unfortunately they ran away. So I jumped with my bow from one pendulum to another, launching myself off the cushions and breaking every single glass platform until the flute musician stole my violin. Damn. Now what I do? Well, I had to think out of the box for the next couple rooms being so limited at traversal and movement, but I soon regained my habitual perks as I reclaimed my violin. The difficulty began to increase as I went deeper and deeper into the woodwind glass house, having tougher air currents to solve and balancing from one side to another while dodging saw blades that moved twice as fast. I must admit that I sweated for a brief moment, but after a long and complicated air current segment in which I had to dodge all the spiky plants, I entered the final chamber and the flute musician and I performed together, bringing life back to the woodwind glasshouse and returning to the orchestra for the final encore. Hey, do you know that 90% of you guys are not subscribed to the channel? Now it would be a great time to solve that. Here, I'll give you some time. Have you subscribed? Thanks, I needed that. Well, moving on. After solving the woodwind crisis, I traveled to the string meadows to find the next musician that would join me in the orchestra. Not so long after entering this section of the realm, I learned the ability to twirl, which gives a little bit of air control for a brief period of time so Embody can maneuver with ease through the spikes and the moving platforms. Twirling in the string meadows had a curious effect, as some platforms would vanish or appear from the thin air as soon as I did my move, and some of them moved or switched sides. This was way tougher than I expected at double the speed, as I had to input my abilities at a really fast pace to land where I wanted to, twirl at the precise time, and predict what the platforms would do. After a couple tricky rooms with projectiles falling from the sky, I finally encountered the violoncello musician, who changed the hour of the day just by playing their bewitching melody. Here things began to be a lot more complicated, as Embody had to swirl down through poles to get launch off to either side at lightning speeds. Bouncy strings were also introduced, which had a really tight time frame to get their boost, and for some reason I have to yet comprehend, these golden slides were so difficult for me to use I seriously think they are my kryptonite. The violoncello musician appeared again to set the time from noon to morning, I guess. And from this point onwards, I encountered some levels of bullshit that I didn't expect. Rooms became a lot harder, requiring lots of precise jumps, chaining successful poles, and dodging lots of spike platforms, demanding intuitive twirlings to just make it through. It was difficult, yeah, but it was also spectacular, and hell, that's the main reason I like to play these games this fast. Look how our brave violinist jumped from one side to the other. Look at the momentum! This felt incredible to do. As the musician set the afternoon in, the challenges Symphonia threw at me became a lot more technical, such as one room in which a bouncy string slowly descended as you had to navigate through a spike maze. I reached the final challenge, in which I had to move through an enormous obstacle course with meteors falling out from the sky constantly, just to put something extra on top of all the other things to keep in mind. It was tough, very tough, but after an undisclosed amount of time I'm not willing to tell anyone, I reached the core of the string meadows, and just like before, Embody and the musician played a beautiful tune that brought life back to the orchestra. Only one musician to go, and this one would be the hardest one yet. The Brass Palace was a difficult spike I couldn't imagine in my wildest dreams. It sort of felt like the difficulty jump between Celeste's chapter The Summit and the core, for those who have played. There were gravity changes, the tightest jumps yet, dozens of flying blades coming to get me. It was brutal. Luckily enough, I was able to secure the last ability of our beloved violinist, which let me throw my bow and attach myself to some platforms from a distance, which was a lifesaver in many occasions. This was the first time in the whole game in which I experienced Vietnam flashbacks of the Celeste but Foster era, in which the gameplay loop would consist on going into a room, dying once, and then again, and 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 again, until I somehow made it to the next one, just to repeat the process all over again. Seriously, just look at some of these rooms. What the hell is this? What have we smoked on here? Well, as I said, somehow, and I have to stress it, somehow I barely made it through just to appear in front of the king's court in the Brass Palace. And I thought to myself, hey, I made it. Now I just have to play the tune with the musician and get back to the orchestra to... Oh, wait. What is happening? Wait, no. There's more? The boss fight against the Brass King was insane. The screen moved in a weirdly pace due to the incremented speed, and the King's machine fired projectiles that I swear to God they seemed to be intelligent enough to predict where I would go for most of the time. This quote-unquote fight was excruciating, draining my energy as I failed every single time, and for once, a thought began to gain some traction in my mind. Was this too much? The devs had warned me that playing at this speed was not the intended design, and there could be some parts almost impossible to play. But then I realized, I was the guy that had beaten Celeste but faster. Hell, I had cleared Farewell at twice the speed. How could I ever look myself in the mirror and be proud of what I've accomplished if I surrendered now? So more determined than ever, I kept going, and I kept going, failing miserably time and time again, until I just locked in and toppled the King's machine with some graceful jumps and good old-fashioned dashes. And so, I brought back the last musician to the heart of the orchestra, and we finally played the beautiful encore to reestablish the realm of Symphonia. And, just like that, I had beaten Symphonia, but faster. Thanks for watching the video. Symphonia is really fun, and if you're interested, I suggest you give it out a try. Playing it at twice the speed was also an interesting challenge, and I cannot wait to find the next game that can push me to the absolute limit. So, with that said, thanks once again for watching, and until we meet again.